Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to this evening's webinar. My name is Adrian Wild. I'm the MD of HBXL, and today we're going to be talking about visual estimating for house builders, and hopefully you'll find it of interest. Before I start here, a quick overview, which some of you will have seen this brief overview, but I think it's informative. Gives you this sort of overview of our business and the software, which will take about 5 minutes, and then we'll have a look at the Plans Express software and Estimator Express software in action, so you can actually see how you can physically use it. As you can see from the screen, we've been trading now for almost 15 years. We're a small family-run business with about 25 employees in Bristol with 11,000 users, and we have a portfolio of software which includes Plans Express, Estimator Express, Health and Safety Expert, Contracts Expert, and also a relatively new program, Project Expert, which we'll briefly touch on again today. And you can also link to our CIA construction industry accounts packages as well. So some of you may be saying, well, what is visual estimating? How does it differ from any other type of estimating? Well, it can be operated in two ways. Firstly, you can generate an estimate from scratch, i.e. you start with a blank screen in the CAD system and just start drawing, and the software then obviously creates the CAD drawing and the 3D model, and you can then export that into Estimator Express, or you can trace over an existing drawing, which superficially you may think, well, that's only for people who do work for other people, but it's also quite a useful technique for developing ideas based on other designs that you may come across on the web. It doesn't mean you're copying them, but on the other hand, there's no point in starting with a blank screen when you can get some core ideas from existing successful designs. Now, with that process in mind, just to give you an overview of how the software might work, it's a fairly faint drawing. This is a pencil drawing of a job that I constructed as a developer, or rather the builders who were working for me at the time built, because at that stage I was acting as a developer rather than the actual builder. And this was a pencil drawing which our technician took. He probably spent 3 or 4 days, maybe even a week, developing the idea here, and I thought it would be an interesting exercise to actually trace over it using our software to see what came out of the software. So we traced over the drawing, and it probably took me an hour or so to do that, maybe a little bit more, because we've got some parapets that needed a little bit of extra thought in terms of representing it in the 3D model. But nonetheless, it was a very quick process. So you can imagine that could be any plan that you have in. Maybe it's an existing house design that you've got that you want to use and perhaps adapt. You can simply trace over in a few minutes to give you your core design. Once I've done that, the software then will automatically generate the elevations with a handful of clicks of the mouse. So all of those elevations would probably have been developed in less than 10 minutes, maybe 5 really, once you get into the swing of it. So you can see that you can build your designs very quickly. And I'm going to be showing you some simple designs on the screen now, and in probably in a quarter of an hour I'll show you how to design a simple house. But the benefit of the software also is that it's also generated a 3D model. So you can see there this house has been developed in a matter of seconds, really, simply by exporting it into the photo visualizer software, which generates these photorealistic models, and you can then import those. You can then import the drawing or a photograph from behind to add realism. There's the same house from the rear, and you can then see a 3D model of a floor plan. Now, I think this is a really interesting concept, because it's a way, it enables you to communicate to your client in a much more real way what the house is actually going to look like floor by floor, rather than looking at a line drawing, which, if you're not experienced at looking at plans, can be quite difficult to comprehend. There's the same design upstairs, and again, each of these designs was created basically in a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, with a little bit of messing around with the colours and so on to get you the drawing that you're looking for. I then thought it would be quite interesting to drop that into a street scene to see how it would look in place. And I actually took this photograph off Street View, went onto Google Maps, took a street view of this housing development. This is actually the development that we built in the late 90s, and I dropped the house into the place where the house was going to exist. So again, I think it really helps the client to understand how the house will be in relation to adjacent properties. And you can also use this same technique for home extensions. There, I don't know whether you'll be able to pick it up on your screen, but I've just softened the image by applying some texture to it. And there are a variety of other techniques that you can apply to make it even more realistic. And as I've suggested there, that sort of thing is quite useful for brochure creation. Now, of course, the other thing that's going on with the software is that it's also creating a detailed estimate. And for those of you who are house building for clients, it will also, rather than for speculative development, you can also generate a quote with a detailed list of everything that you've included in the project with a few mouse clicks. If you look at the bottom of the screen here, you can see there that in this case we've produced a 30-page quote to give to the client. Now, you don't have to give them as much detail. If you don't want to, you can minimize the amount of information and boil it down to half a dozen pages or even less if that's how you operate. Just very briefly, as we said earlier, the software will also generate all your health and safety documentation for constructing the house. And for those of you who are working for clients rather than selling the houses on spec, you can also create a contract between you and the client. Now, again, just pause to think that by doing that trace over, you've generated all this cascade of information, 3D model, detailed estimates, customer quotes, contracts, health and safety documentation. All of that has been generated virtually instantaneously and requires very little rework to help you run your business. So it's really a very powerful tool set. Okay, so I'm now going to show you briefly how the software works in practice. So I'm going to go into the Plans Express software, and just to sort of ram home the point, essentially with visual estimating, you're acquiring two software packages. You're purchasing the Plans Express, which is one tool set, and you can run that on your own if you don't want to use the estimating tool, and it exports the information into Estimator Express, which again is a completely separate tool, and you can run that if you want. So if you've got an architect who's insisting that he wants to draw by hand or use AutoCAD or whatever, doesn't matter, you can just use the estimating software. You obviously don't get the benefit of being able to import the geometry of the drawing straight into the software, which clearly saves a lot of time on the takeoff. So, as I say, here we are in the Plans Express tool set. Just running my eye across the top of here, you can see that we're in the architectural ribbon, and there are a number of buttons there which relate to the different components in a house: external walls, internal walls, doors and windows, and so on. And if you click on each of these buttons, you'll find that there are numerous, in this example, external walls attached to that, and within that there are a raft of selections that you can make. So you've got all those different types of external walls: brick and block, block and block, brick and SIPs, which is structural insulated panels, ICF, insulated concrete formwork. You can also use the software for timber frame. So virtually every wall type that you can think of is catered for. Similarly, with internal walls, you've got brick and block, block walls, you've got stud walls, you've got metal partitions, SIPs panel walling, and so on. You can also apply, once you have your elevations, you can apply various techniques such as dental coursing, dogtooth brickwork and so on to the elevations, and again all that information is captured and automatically estimated. Loads of internal doors that you can drag and drop onto the drawing. We're going to see all these in action. Lots of doors and windows, structural openings. For those of you who are involved in barn conversions and the like, you've also got structural openings into existing walls, different types of stairs, flooring systems, whether they're suspended timber floors, concrete floors, rafts, beam and block floors and so on. Different types of roofs, cut roofs, truss roofs, SIPS roofs, flat roofs. Attic conversions, whether that's in an existing property or a brand new property, that deals with all of the complexity of attics, the upstand walls, intermediate floors in between the upstands, dormers, roof windows, and again all of these are basically drag and drop onto the drawing. Domestic drainage, all your manholes and gullies and so on, external works, block patios, paving, fencing and so on. Domestic electrical components, again when you drag those onto the drawing it obviously sets them out for you, but also schedules all of the cabling and clips and so on that you need to install them. For those of you who decide to purchase the Ultimate system, you also have a detailed plumbing system, and you can again drag and drop the various components onto the drawing, and it will carry out a detailed estimate of the cost, pipes and so on. Now at the end here we've also got plastering, decorating and renovation. Now generally speaking with Plans and Estimator Express, when you place a wall it estimates everything associated with the wall, foundations, walls, plastering and decorating. That's all part of that element. But of course in the real world there are situations in the renovation world where you're just going to plaster a wall, you're not going to build it first, and this subsystem allows you to do that. Same process with decorating. Generally speaking that's all part of the object that you've placed on the drawing, and ditto again for renovation. So you can take, let's say for argument's sake, an internal wall, and you can say to the system, I'd like to carry out these various elements to it, like to hack the wall, replaster it, skirt it, cornice, picture and dado rails and so on, and the software will instantly estimate everything on that wall for you. So that, if you like, gives you a sense of the scope of what the software will do. So let's see it in action. So on the main canvas of the screen you'll see that I've loaded a standard drawing template. Down the bottom here you can see that you can insert your own company logo and name and so on, and save that as a template so that every time you do a drawing it's fully populated with all that information. I've also set the drawing out so that it can take a two-story job and represent it in 3D. So I've spent a couple of minutes setting that up just so that the demo is a little bit quicker. Okay, so I'm going to start now by doing an external brick and block cavity wall. So I pick that, look in my library, and I'm going to pick a 2.55 high basic wall height, and it's a multi-story wall. So I click on the 2550 wall, and it then throws up a dialog which, for those of you who use Estimator Express, you'll recognize it. This allows you to confirm the various elements of the wall. Now you'll see that our 2550 wall has actually changed to a suggested 2775 wall. What's actually going on there is that the system has automatically added on the floor thickness of 225 to allow for the joists and flooring, because the upper floor will obviously spring off that level. I can then confirm the thickness or edit the wall thicknesses. I can confirm the foundation width and the depth of the concrete, and the depth of the dig and the depth of the concrete. I can confirm whether I want to support the excavation. Well, let's assume that I know that in this particular job I've got good ground and I'm not going to have to support it. I can confirm the bulking of the excavated material because it's going to estimate the amount of space that the the spoil occupies as we throw it in the lorry, and I can then confirm the various components of the footings. Now incidentally, when you look at any of these dimensions, you may say, well, I'm not quite sure what that means, and on any screen you can put the tech tips and tech labels on, and you can see that various things have appeared to help you understand the drawing. And as I click in any cell, also more information appears on the right hand side in case it's not transparent exactly what's required. 99% of the time it's quite obvious, but help is always at hand there if you need it. I'm then going to confirm that I want to insulate the wall and whether I want a separate DPC, even though I've got blues. And finally, the software then invites me to confirm what my plastering specification is. So am I plastering, am I decorating, and how many skirting boards have I got? Am I priming and decorating it? Yes, I'm doing all of those things. So I press finish, and I'm now ready to place the wall on the drawing. Now you can see I've got my wall then. As I move my mouse around, it's asking me to place it. I can do that visually, or if I press the arrow keys on my keyboard, I can simply enter the length of that wall. I can also work in brick lengths and so on if I want to, but for simplicity I'm just going to use simple dimensions at this stage. And then I can then work across the drawing. And so I press my right hand arrow. Maybe I've got a front projection on this job. Comes out 1200 mil and goes across another 4.5 meters. Goes back 1200, across another 4.5 meters. And really I then want to find my way back to the start of the house, and I just press S on my keyboard, and you can see that it's now completed the journey back to the starting point. If I have a look at my 3D window at this stage, pressing the 3D preview button, if I just move this over a little bit, you can now see that I've got a 3D model of the house, and it's building that in the background all of the time. Let's just close that down. You can leave it operating if you want to, but I'm going to close that. And the next thing I'm going to do, going back to my architectural menu, is I'm going to pick some internal walls. So I'm going to pick an internal block wall, and I'm going to assume this is a 2550 single story. And in fact, I'm going to go for I'm going to go for a 2550 multi-story because I'm going to support some walls above. So again, I pick that, and once again the dialog appears, adding the 225 for the floor zone. Again, I can put my tech labels on if I'm not sure what information is, and I can change any of the values that I see on the screen, the width of the footings, the depth, the concrete thickness, and so on. I can confirm the height of my, if I've got any blues running within my footings. And again, I can confirm that I want to plaster both sides in this case, decorate both sides, and have two skirtings, one on each side of the wall. So at this stage you can see that I'm also invited to prime and decorate the walls. Okay, so I can now simply click on any corner that I want to place that, and you'll see that's actually hanging off the one side of that. That means I need to change the justification of that wall. That then puts it on the correct side. And as I move my mouse up towards the top of the screen there, you can see it said perp. It's looking for the perpendicular, and you can see that it's joined that up for me. I can then do the same sort of thing on that side. And again, it's asking me to change the justification. Click on there, and you can see that. Okay, now let's assume I want to set out a room a bit more accurately now. I can simply place my mouse over on the corner, press the R key because I want to set out this room relative to that corner, and let's say I want to make that 3600, and you can then see it's setting that wall out relative to that corner. And again, it looks for the perpendicular. And generally speaking, the software will automatically heal the junctions. There you can see it hasn't, but if I refresh the drawing, That's automatically healed, and you can see the outline of the footings there. So I can work around my drawing quite quickly setting out these, so I'll just drop on another couple of walls here just for an example, as it were, and place those on the drawing. So I hope you can see you can lay out your drawing very quickly using the software. Okay, so let's assume we now want to put some doors and walls in here. So I'm going to start now by putting some windows in the front of the house, and I'm going to go for dummy sash with bar, a 1200 deep by 1200 wide window, say. And again, the software asks me to confirm the widths. Now, generally speaking, you wouldn't change these because it does relate to a real-world window in the estimator, but you can tweak that and then edit the window in the estimate when you get there. It also invites you to set your fixing centers, because the software is not only going to work out the cost of the window, it's also going to work out the cost of all the fixings, your damp-proof course, any overrun that you've got on your damp-proof course. You can see it's even making allowance there for the sill board overrun at each end of the window. I can confirm the depth of the reveals. And again, when I click in each cell, it tells me what the software is asking for. It asks me to confirm whether there's an internal window board or whether I'm plastering the sill, whether I'm plastering the reveals. It asks me whether I'm decorating the exterior of the window. In this case, it's a softwood window, so yes, I'm going to decorate that. Okay, so I can now place that window on screen. I can do it very accurately using the dimension keys. There are other techniques for setting them out, or I can simply say to the software, actually what I want to do for simplicity in this example is find the midpoint of that space. With Windows, it automatically assumes that I'm going to place several similar windows around. So I'm just placing a few of those just as an example. We'll do the same with the doors now. Perhaps a bifold door, 3 meters wide, 4 panel. Again, the software asks me to confirm the height, the width, fixing details, reveal depths, and so on. So all the same questions are being asked, but 90 times out of 100, actually, you can just say, well, I'm going to accept the defaults because that's close enough in terms of an estimate. I can then place those doors on the screen, and I can move my mouse around to set them out. Incidentally, as I'm moving around the screen and zooming in and out, I'm just using the scroll wheel on the mouse. You do need a mouse with a scroll wheel. It makes the whole experience much easier to use. Again, I can change that angle, the position of the leaves. I'll pop a front door on here just for completeness. I'll accept the defaults, and I'll place that door on there. Now obviously this is a very simple design, but I hope it's demonstrating to you that it really is very straightforward to do. It genuinely is drag and drop, place the items on the screen. Maybe we want a structural opening. I'm making this design up as I go along, so you can see that it's quite easy to play around with it. And I'm going to put a structural opening into a new wall, and we'll make that a 3 meter wide opening. When you place the elements like this, it's automatically assuming standard steels and so on, which you can edit as you get closer to the actual estimate. Okay, so you can see we've placed that in plan quite straightforwardly, and again we can have a look at a 3D preview of that just to reassure ourselves that it's the sort of thing that we want to build. Okay, so I'm reasonably happy with that. It's obviously not a masterpiece, but it's starting to come along for a quick demonstration. I'm just going to save this. Right, the next thing I can think about doing is to place some flooring on here. So I'm going to place a floor slab in here, and I can place each rectangle within the different rooms one at a time, but for simplicity and speed I'm going to put what we call an irregular shaped slab on the drawing, and you'll see what I mean by that in a second. Again, the software is asking me to confirm the various elements: sand blinding, hardcore, the thickness of the slab. I think we can get away with 100 mil here. Is there a DPM? Is it insulated? Is there an overrun or an overlap on the DPM as you roll the sheets out? Am I reinforcing? Am I power floating? And then finally, it asked us to confirm the amount of plant that we want to use for this. Now, we could have automated this completely, but my view on it when I wrote the system was that it was better to give the user more control over plant because it often spends a lot of time idle. You know, it may only be 2 or 3 hours work to get the oversight sorted on here, but the machine undoubtedly will be sitting around for a day or two while things are going. So I'm going to allow a couple of days for that, a couple of days for a plate compactor, same with a wheelbarrow, shovel. I don't need bolt crops, I don't need a vibrating poker for this job, but I'm going to allow a couple of days for a power float and let's say 6 collections. Okay. Incidentally, at the bottom here, there's what we got, the command window, which is actually a sort of help window, and it's saying to me, give me the start point of the slab. Well, I'm actually going to click around the corner of this slab, and as I say, I'm going to go around the overall perimeter of it. I'm cheating a little bit because I'm whacking this slab right the way through the job for speed. I actually made a small mistake there. You'll see I've clicked on that wrong corner, but I can come back and check that in a second. The webinar software does tend to interfere with the graphics slightly. So I press C on my keyboard and that closes the entire perimeter. So you can see that I've got the entire perimeter, sorry, the entire area of the slab covered in concrete now. It then does what we call daisy chaining, which is to remind you to put ancillary items on a slab. In this case, it's asking whether we want to do some perimeter insulating. So I'm going to say, yes, I do want to do that. It asks me to confirm the depth of the perimeter insulation. I'm going to allow 200 mil. And I then, again, click around the perimeter in the same way, zooming in and out, making sure that you're accurate. Take your time with it. If you try and rush it, as I did earlier, you can see you can make a mistake and miss the corner. But I'm going to sort that out in a sec. I don't know how long we've actually been doing this. Probably 20 minutes, is it? And we've already got the outline of a simple house, albeit that it's not a masterpiece. Okay, I don't want to do any more perimeter insulation, but I do want to just go back there and click on that and place it back neatly in the corner. Okay, so again, we can have a look at the 3D preview. And we can see that we've got the entire floor placed there. Okay, I'll just save that again. Always a good practice to save in case you have any technological problems or the kids trip over the wire. Incidentally, the software does automatically do a backup periodically. It does a save for you to, you know, preserve problems of computers crashing and so on. Right, now the next thing I'm going to do is to copy this floor as a template for upstairs. So I select the whole floor, I middle click on my mouse, and I then say copy selection. Again, in the command window it's saying give a reference point. I can click on that reference point there, and I'm going to place it on the drawing over there. It then says, okay, do you want to copy doors and windows on the external walls? Well, I want to copy the windows. I've got no opening, so that doesn't matter, so I can untick that. I don't want to do the external doors. I don't want doors upstairs. The wall height upstairs is only going to be 2550. Yes, I want to remove the foundations upstairs. Sorry, I don't want to have the foundations upstairs as well. Internal walls, I want to preserve the doors, windows and openings because they're all internal, obviously. And again, the internal walls are 2550, and again, I'm going to remove the foundations. So I click OK, and the program then copies all that information. So it's just doing a little bit of a thinking there. And you can see it's copied that floor. Well, clearly I don't want the concrete floor there, so I can delete that. But I've now got a direct copy of upstairs. Now, the chances are the upstairs is actually going to be a slightly different layout. I may well keep this area to form a staircase core. So I'm going to take out those walls, for example, that structural opening and those walls. I could then, of course, go back in and place some stud walls for bathrooms and bedrooms and so on. So I could just place those. Now, I'm not going to spend any time doing this, but hopefully you can understand the principle. Just going to drop some additional windows in there. Now, incidentally, what the software actually does, it actually remembers the last window or door that you used, so it can speed the process up. Clearly, I'd spend a few more minutes now laying out the suspended floor, and I'd obviously do that around stairs and so on. Again, it's just a question of dragging and dropping those, but we're obviously on a fairly tight schedule, so if you'll bear with me, I won't do that at this stage. A customer's just asked me how long will it take. It's probably going to take us round about another half hour, maybe another 3/4 of an hour if people are interested to stick around. There is a lot to cover. Right, the next thing for me to do is to place a roof on here, so I'm going to do that with a truss roof, a 40-degree truss roof. So I can confirm the pitch of the roof, I can confirm the soffit widths, I can confirm all of the strapping and timber nogs and details and all that thing, because the software will work all those out for me, confirm whether I want eaves, ventilators and so on, whether I need allowance for cutting and so on. So I've already confirmed the soffits. It allows me to confirm the truss centres. I always used to do them at 400mm, so you didn't have to nog out for plasterboard, but it's entirely up to you. You can change that to 600 if you want. You can set your budget for roof trusses. I would always say to people, get a quote as you move towards your actual design, but at the moment that sort of price is a reasonable estimate for your truss roofs. Spacings on gutter clips. The software will even work out how many gutter clips you need. Your tiling details. Sorry, I forgot to turn off my Outlook there, and you'll see I've got some spam coming in. It allows you to confirm spacings of rafter noggings and so on, and then finally whether you're priming your fascias. Well, I know that in my specification I've actually got plastic fascias, so I'm actually going to set those to no, I don't want to decorate my fascias. I then press finish, and the software then invites me to select the type of roof that I want to use. So I'm going to go for something fairly straightforward. I'm going to put an apex roof on the main roof with a gable projection on the rest of it. So I pick that, click OK, and again the command window is starting to give me advice. Indicate the wall that the roof is sitting on. So I'm going to pick that wall. I then draw my gable. And define the length of the roof. And straight away you can see that we've got the perimeter of the roof appearing, taking into account the soffits. It then asks me whether I want to place ceilings and so on. Now, again, for speed, because we haven't got much time, I'm going to say no, but that would basically be the same process as laying out the concrete ground slab. Same with the bracing and so on. You just drag them onto the drawing. So I'm going to say no to that at this stage, but I'm then going to repeat the process for my front roof. Choose that, click OK, choose the wall, choose the first corner, choose the second corner, and again, if you look carefully at the command window, in fact, you can see that it's doing an auto save now, so the system will pause for a while. Again, this is to solve problems where you get a computer malfunction. So you can see where the software is actually saving that data. I then need to press T on my computer and click on the roof that it frames into, and you can see the outline of the roof has now been formed. Okay, so I'm going to do a save of that, which is over and above obviously the automatic save. Got a bit of a glitch there. I think again it's probably the webinar software interfering with the graphics engine. Okay. So at this stage, again, we can have a look at the 3D. Hopefully the graphics engine isn't going to upset it. And you can see we've now got a complete 3D model of the house, which I guess that's probably taken us, 20 minutes to knock out. Now, as I say, I know it's not a perfect specimen, but hopefully it does give you a good idea of what you can do. Okay, I'm now going to create an elevation of the house. So I'm in my Views and 3D tab. I click on the Draw Elevation. Again, if I look down at my command window, you can see that it's giving me advice. Give the wall that the elevation is required of. Where do you want to stand? Well, I want to stand at the front of the house. I want to reach in at least as far as the ridge. And I want to go to the left of the house that way, the right of the house that way. I select what they call a reference point, and I can then place that down there. Yes, I want to create all elevations. And you can see the software has built that elevation for me. So I'll do the same for the rear. Where do I want to stand? I want to stand at the back of the house. I want to reach as far as that elevation. And I want to go from left to right. And I want to place that over there. Okay, so you can see creating the elevations is virtually instantaneous. And as we were saying earlier, I can then start to embellish that by placing these various components on the drawing. And we'll just stick a couple of keystone lintels on that. Oh, sorry, flared head lintels. And to give you an example of what else it can do, I'll put a soldier course over the door there. There you go. So again, hopefully you're starting to see that the software is very quick to use. Incidentally, I can conceal the construction lines that I put on there just by toggling them on and off, just to give us a clearer idea of the drawing. Very quickly, I can also select any wall, middle click, and it automatically dimensions it for me. So click the wall, middle click, dimension. So I'm going to think about that one. Okay, so all the sort of core tools that you'd expect in the CAD system exist. It'll automatically create elevations for us. I can drag and drop various embellishments onto the drawing, non-estimated symbols for argument's sake. So if I go into the landscape library, it takes a few seconds to load the first time that you use it because there are so many symbols in here. And it's simply a question of choosing the symbol that you want to place on the drawing. So again, the graphics engines are interfering, so it's a bit slow. Oops, there we go, it's up there. I can then move that down and place it on the drawing. So you've got all the usual sort of elements that you can place on the drawing. Okay, so let's save that drawing now. And I'm now going to import that into Estimator, and it will estimate all of the components that we've drawn. Now, as you can imagine, we've only placed external walls, slabs, internal walls, doors, windows, architectural stonework, heads and sills and so on, because we've only been doing it for a few minutes. So it'll only obviously estimate those components that we've done. So because of the time, I'm going to go straight in and import this estimate and explain some of the processes that go on under the bonnet as we're generating the estimate. So first of all, we give the house a name. So I'm going to call this plot 1, and it's a house. And I can then go and import the drawing from recent places. Where did I put it? That's the one, 1943, template 1, it was called 1942. So I bring that into the drawing. Sometimes it will give a graphic there if it's got the time. Again, I think probably the graphics engine is interfering with some of the tools on the software. I can choose the price book. Now, briefly about the price book. The price book can feature material prices from a variety of merchants: Dewson's, Travis Perkins, Trade Point, Keyline, Graham's, Builder Warehouse, which is a partner who we work with that provides a brokered set of prices. And you can also even get prices from your local merchants using our automated quotation system. In terms of labour, you enter your own labour rates for your gang sizes, for say your 2 and 1 brickie gang, a single brickie on his own, or roofing gangs and so on. Put your prices in there. The software then applies production factors through them. How long does a gang take to lay a square metre of blocks, for argument's sake, and it works out a rate from that. In terms of plant, you can input your own prices for JCBs, skips and so on. You may have your own plant, you may wish to put a lower price in, or you may be hiring them in conventionally. Just enter your prices and the software takes all that into account. You then choose the specification. Now what the specification allows you to do is to set the software up to precisely use the products you wish to use. So if you use a particular block from a particular supplier, you can set that as your default building material, your default blocks, you can set in your budget for your bricks. In our case, we've probably got 50p or whatever in there for a brick, or you can actually put in the brick you want to use. So we ship the software with a building regs targeted specification, but you can go in there and you can tweak that to reflect precisely the materials that you want to use, and then the software will automatically schedule that for you directly from the drawing. So I'm going to use our standard specification, which is a new Part L spec that takes account of the new building regs. I'm then going to do what we call bring in a Plans Express import for various other workbooks that calculate elements that aren't automatically calculated by the software. These would include things like your site cabins, your site setup fees, your architectural fees if you're using external architect, your planning application fees, and there is a handful of other workbooks that aren't automatically estimated by the software, and it throws those up as a checklist. So I'm going to go with the standard Plans Express import. It then allows me to set a program from the standard library of Gantt charts that exists. So I'm going to call this a large house. I define the start date of the project, which I'm going to say is the 1st of March, or the 2nd of March. Click OK. The software will then use that. I can then input the reference for the site, so that appears on various reports and so on. If you're building for somebody for profit rather than speculatively, you can input in here your the profit you wish to make from the client, or you may wish to use this to simply estimate the overhead element of your job. So you might mark that by 20% to cover the overheads. Or it may be that you're saying, well, whenever I do a building project, I want to make 40%, so you can pop that in there. That's measured as expressed as a function of the cost rather than the overall project. The software then allows you to set the rate of inflation that you're expecting. That's obviously very important at the moment, because building inflation is quite severe, and what this will do is to incorporate an element of cost into your estimate based on the passage of time, because it may be that you're not starting this particular house for 6 months. It may then be taking 6 months to build it, so by the time you've got to the end of that particular project, the actual build cost will have gone up. It's taken you a year, so some of those materials may well have gone up the full 5 or 10%. Now, clearly there's a bit of estimating going on here, because none of us really know what inflation will be, but nonetheless, you can bet your boots it's not going to be zero. So I've got it set by default at 5%. So I'm going to leave it at that, press finish, and the software will then import the estimate into the it'll import the geometry from the CAD system. It'll then merge it with the specification that we've got by default, and also pull in the pricing, whether that's live pricing from those merchants or the specific price that we put in for our labor and plant. And this normally takes, I don't know, probably a couple of minutes to physically do. So it's actually pulling in those aluminium doors. It's got quite a library to have a rummage through for those, so it might take a couple of seconds to do that if they haven't been used before. You can then see it's starting to bring in the internal block walls. So just to recap here, we did a bit of a preview, which probably took us 10 minutes. We started to do this job probably at 7:10. We're now here coming up to 7:50. So it's taken us about 40 minutes to do the outline of that house and starting to pull it in. So it's done a lot of work, albeit that I'm fully cognizant of the fact that it's not a real design, and the real design would obviously take a little bit longer, but it's perfectly practical to imagine that you'll be able to do a complete design in a morning or a day, depending on how much time you want to spend thinking about the design, or whether you're actually reusing other designs that you've already had. And I know when I look back into our drawings portfolio, paper-based drawings, I think I built about 80 houses, and probably every house had some slight differences to it. I think we probably had a library of 20 houses, but we kept on adapting them for the specific site, or a client might want a wall moved, or a dining room knocking through into the lounge, or whatever. So it does allow you to reuse your existing drawings, or indeed new ones, as you move forward. So you can see that it's taken just over a minute to import those few items. Now again, it's clearly only estimated part of the job because we've only drawn a section of the job. But let's have a look at what the program is actually doing under the bonnet, as it were. So I'm going to open up the brick and block cavity walls, and you can see now on the screen that we've got a whole series of the different walls that it's estimated. So if we scroll over to the right, first of all, you can see that we've got 2, 4, 6, 8 walls which define the perimeter of it. It's captured the lengths of each of those walls, as you can see, 13.5 metre across the back of the house, 2 9.5 side walls, 2 projections. It's captured the heights, the coursing blocks. It's worked out the area of the openings. It's captured all the foundation details. It's confirmed that we're not planking and strutting the excavation, and the bulking and factors and so on. So it's captured all that information from the drawing, all the geometry. It then carries out some intermediate calculations to work out areas and volumes of concrete and so on, and it then applies that to the underlying specification. So you can see all the individual walls are worked out. If I scroll across here, you can see, for argument's sake, that we've got 11.62 cubic meters of concrete. If we look at the bricks above DPC, you can see that we've got 265 square meters, and by default in our specification we've got a 60p brick. And it's done that for every element of the walls. This is just the walls that we're looking at now. So everything has been done: damp-proof course, sand, cement, the plaster finish to the walls, the skirting boards, the paint for the skirting boards. You can see the labour there for bottoming out the trench. You can see that we've got no cost in there for planking and strutting because said no, we don't want it. As we scroll further down, you can see all the labour for laying of the bricks, both in the footings and above ground. By default, we've got a JCB for doing the excavation, and we're suggesting that we remove the spoil in a 20-ton truck. All of these things can be changed to reflect your world. You don't have to use the standard data that we use. I can then have a look at this same information in a costed version. I'll just put on a highlighting tool for us. So as I click down, it's more easier to see. So if we look at the bricks above DPC again, you can see that they're 60p each. There are 60 of those to the square metre, so 60 times 0.6 is £36 a square metre. By default, we've allowed a 7.5% waste in that. Again, you can change that. You don't have to use our methodology. They're bricks, so later on you can say to the software, show me all the bricks in this house, or indeed if I've got several houses merged into a project, show me all the bricks, or all the blocks, all the plastering, or all the bricklaying labour that I've got across the development. All that is available to us. Again, if I scroll across, you can see that the total cost is 9,564 plus the wastage cost of 717, so there's £10,282 for the bricks. That's the actual number of bricks that we need, just shy of 16,000. There's a 7.5% wastage, so we need around 17,000 for this large house. If we scroll down and look at the labour for the bricks above DPC, you can see that by default we've assigned a 2-on-1 gang for this. Now, it may be that on a bigger project you say, well, no, we always use a 4-on-1 or we use a 3-on-1 gang. That's fine. You just put that in there and you define their rate of production. So if I just scroll across here again, So by default, on this particular example, they're set at £52 an hour. Clearly, the last time I looked at this, the labour rates were significantly cheaper, probably somewhere up in the Midlands. I know down in London, that may be £70, £75 an hour. You simply change that in the price book, and you can see that wherever that labour rate appears, all of these items will be automatically changed. So we're saying that the brickies are costing £52 an hour for the 2-in-1 gang. It takes them 0.6 of an hour, so 0.6 times 52 is £31.20 a square metre. And again, it works out that across. We need 265 square metres of brickwork, just as we did up here with the facings themselves. The cost of that labour for just doing the brickwork is £8,289, and the estimated time for them to do just the brickwork is 159 hours. And if you look down here, you can see there's a corresponding amount for the other items. If I just drag my mouse across here like that, you can see there's the total amount of time for them to do the entire job. All those items there. So this level of detail is simply cascading off the back of us placing those walls on the drawing. If you remember, it probably took us 5 minutes to actually set those walls up. Okay, so let's go back to the summary, and you'll see that a similar calculation has gone on for every element of the job. So we could look in each one of those, and you'll find the same degree of detail. But let's have a look at a report now, which allows us to look at the project across the whole estimate. So here we are in the report manager. These icons at the top here, they're the various graphs that we've got by default in there, and we'll have a look at one of those in a sec. But let's have a look at a cost summary. This is the raw cost coming out of the back of the software. So the raw cost for the items that we've defined is just shy of 82,000 quid. Just noticed I've got some question. I was told this presentation was going to cover estimating. Well, we've just started to do that, Daniel, so I hope. So stick with us. We've done some estimating, so hopefully we've answered your question on that. Right, no other questions. If anybody's got any more questions in the next few minutes, please ask. It doesn't matter if we run on after the 8 o'clock. Okay, so that's the summary of it, but it'd be nice to have more detail of that. Now I can grab hold of any one of these buttons or bars here, and the software will then drill down to show me a breakdown of that. Okay, so there's 30 grand's worth of labour. What is that labour? Well, if I get hold of this button and drag that down, you can see that it starts to break it out. Okay, so there's 16.5 grand's worth of brickwork. What is that? Well, it's those guys doing that. Yeah, but what are they doing for that money? They're doing those tasks. So you can see precisely what any element of cost is for every item, whether it's a carpenter or a decorator. And if we scroll much further down, you can see that the materials are broken down into exactly the same degree of detail. As I was saying earlier, you can see all this information across an entire project. We can merge the data quite simply for several houses. Now, before I go look at the next report, I'm just going to go into the chart, which is the Gantt chart. Now, you may remember we chose a Gantt chart for a house, and you can see that it's pulled that in. Now, these are standard charts, and you can simply look at any element of it and you can change it. So for argument's sake, I've got a 10-week allowance for planning. I know it's only supposed to be 8 weeks, but call me pessimistic, but it never seems to take that long. So if I click on the planning application, if I click on the duration, you'll see the bar up here starts to grow. So let's assume that we're really gloomy and we think it's going to take 16 weeks to get planning. So that's clearly going to impact on the rest of the job. So I'm going to press Cascade, and you'll see the rest of the bars have moved across there. Now at the moment I've assumed that I'm so confident that we'll get planning that building regs application will go in as we approach the end of it. Now maybe you're not quite as optimistic as me, so you can get hold of that and you can shift the start date of the building regs until you've actually got planning. Again, press cascade, and you can look at any one of those bars and change them to reflect your perception of how long that job's going to take. So it's a really easy tool to use. It's not Microsoft Project. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles that Microsoft Project has, which is a great package, but it's not easy to use for a practical builder. We do have another product called Project Expert, which has far more functionality, but it's the next level up, and get the core software under your belt, and then you can then start to move on to that. That program is particularly powerful when you use it for multiple projects in a housing development situation, because what it allows you to do is to plan each job separately, and then to see what impact that's having on your labor resources. Are you overloading them, or have you got dead time in them? And you can move the bars around within Project Expert to optimize your expectation on any job, so that you haven't got people hanging around or you haven't overloaded your team. So really powerful tool. Unfortunately, we haven't got time to look at it very closely today. So spend a few minutes in here, probably 5 or 10 minutes per job, and you've then got an accurate chart to start to look at things like cash flow, because each one of those bars is plugged into the data. You may remember when we looked at the brickwork shell, the bricks above DPC, for argument's sake, the bricks there were actually assigned to the brickwork shell. So that means that as we move those bars along, it will also reschedule things like cash flow and ordering schedules. So let's have a look at a cash flow, a cost cash flow. If I open that up, this is a graph here. So what the program is actually doing there, it's actually analyzing the cost of the brick, of the brick walls, the roofs, the plastic faces. All of those costs are coming in, and they're being analyzed and compared to generate this cost cash flow. Same thing will happen on your sales cash flow if you're working for a domestic client and you're getting stage payments in. It'll also do things like what I call just-in-time schedules, which, just having a look here, we call it a materials task list. So let's open that report up. And you can see here that based on the Gantt chart that we've got, we need those materials on those particular dates. In the price book, there are also suggested lead times, 6 or 8 weeks for bricks, a week for a bag of cement. Well, you may say, well, I can go and pick up a bag of cement tomorrow at Juices without a problem. Of course you can, but using this software, it helps you to plan ahead so that you can try to get stuff delivered rather than using your resources collecting materials. So a lot of builders tell us they spend an inordinate amount of money sending blokes off to collect stuff. If you can cut that down, you can save yourself an awful lot of money. Now, in terms of, for those of you who do housing for domestic clients, as I was saying earlier, you can actually produce a quotation to give to your customer. So I'm going to go here and produce the quote by build phase, and the software will automatically generate a report for us. Now, as we were saying earlier, you can do a very big report that produces absolutely everything, or you can do a more limited one. I'm going to do what we call a key resource report, which is basically building materials. On that report, I can show the phase totals, because that's when the client would actually be paying you. I can put a little picture on there if I want, just to brighten up the quote to distinguish it from everybody else's. I can build in inflation or not, and why wouldn't you? It's a real cost. You can build in what we call customer-friendly descriptions, which allows you to put a more generalized description. If I click on that button, you'll see the engineering brick, for argument's sake, changes. So there's quite a long description. You might want to put something more simplistic in there. And it may be that you want to be a little bit fuzzy for some of the materials. You may not want to specify the block type, for argument's sake. You just want to say it's an insulation block. It gives you more flexibility. You can also build in order quantities for each line of the data. Most people wouldn't do that, but I'm going to leave that on this particular occasion because it's quite an interesting report to see. You can also do a report with all resources which shows labour and plant and materials. Now, very few people would actually show that to a client, but it's a really good document to produce to do what I call a sanity check on the estimate to make sure you've not missed anything out. You know, you might have forgotten to draw a Velux window or something on the drawing, and it's having it printed out in a Word format rather than a spreadsheet format. I find it makes the information much more transparent and easy to digest. So you can see there that the software has generated the customer-facing quote very quickly. In this case, we've got a header page for it, and then you can start to see that we've actually got each phase of the job described. So you can see we've got that approximately 12 cubic meters of concrete. We've got the structural concrete for the internal block work. We've got the perimeter insulation there for the oversight. We've got the footings. We've got the brickwork shell. So let's just pause on that because we had a look at that in detail in the estimate itself. So you can see there's those 60p bricks, and there's the actual quantity of bricks. At this stage it isn't including wastage, because in this circumstance you wouldn't want to be saying to your client, look, I'm wasting all these bricks. We all know it's a reality, but you don't really want to overstate that to the client. And you can see again all the detail that the software has generated: damp-proof courses, door frames, combination lintels, cavity closers. All of that information has been generated simply by placing those items on the drawing. And you can see here at the bottom here, we've got a 13-page document that's describing it all. So there's the joinery first fix. You can see we've got that metal studding for that odd piece of wall that we placed, the door casings, the dummy sash windows, the window boards, the threshold board there for the aluminium doors. All that's been pulled in the correct build phase. So what you're actually doing here, you're saying to the client, when I've done my first fix joinery, these are all the tasks I will have done, so I'm putting you on notice that I'm going to be giving you a bill for this. So that's another function of the software. If we briefly now go back into the estimating tool, I'm going to close this actual job down, and I'm going to show you how the project tool set actually works. I'll come back to the questions that you've asked me in a few secs. So I've gone back to the main menu of Estimator Express, and incidentally, while I'm here, I'll briefly go into my settings, and this is where you can set up the price book and the specifications to reflect your world. So you'll need to spend well, you can actually start estimating straight out of the box. You don't need to go in here and fiddle around, and it's probably a good idea to do a trial job when you first get the software. But once you've got your head around how it all fits together, you might want to spend a few hours just configuring this to reflect your world more precisely. Okay, so going back to the main menu and going into My Projects, this is where you can merge several jobs together. So I'm going to create a new project here, and I'm going to call it Development 2. Now, incidentally, even if you're not doing development work, so you're just doing general building work, you can still use this tool set, because it may be that you've got half a dozen home extensions, or maybe you've got 3 extensions and a new house and some refurb work. You can pull all of that into the project tool set, and it will allow you to see the overall value of the work that you've got planned. It'll allow you to look at the Gantt chart for the overall work. Particularly if you start to use that in conjunction with Project Expert, it will allow you to resource level your project. So I've created this new project called Development 2. and I can then merge several jobs together. So I'm just going to pull in 2 jobs for this example. So I've now got a project with 2 jobs in, and I can look at reports for those 2 jobs. You can see I've got that job we've just done for just shy of 82 grand, and an existing sample job I did the other day for a client. So here we are again in exactly the same project tool set. But if I open up my cost report in this occasion, you can see that's gone up from the 82,000 to 137 because it's got the cost of the 2 jobs. So if I look in here, you can see the 2 jobs are available there, and I can actually filter that, or I can drag that down rather than I did before, and you can see I've got the cost separated for the 2 jobs. And again, I can start to drill down into that information, or I can present it in a different way. Again, I can do exactly the same things to understand what my costs are. On the chart front, I've now got 2 charts side by side. Now on the screen that you've got, it's probably going to be a little bit difficult to see it because it needs printing out on a different size screen. So you can see each of those jobs is lying in there slightly what's the word, out of phase. So our first job is starting on the 2nd of March, the other job is 16, so you can start to see how the work is overlapping. If I want to look at that more closely, I can start to drill down in that by filtering the bars. So let's say I wanted to have a look at the groundworks in this particular project. So I can say, well, I want to look at the foundations, footings, oversight, main drains, external work and drains of that job, and I want to do the same thing on the second job. So I'm just trying to find the information. So foundations, oversight, footings, press select, and you can see I've now got a more simplified version of it. Now clearly at the moment I haven't got my ground workers working continuously, and clearly that often happens with groundwork, but people like brickies and chippies and so on, you'd be looking to establish a workload that actually ensured that your guys were fully occupied, because we all know how difficult it is how important it is to maintain continuity of your workforce, but also how difficult it is to actually do that. This software combined with the Project Expert software will really help you to do that. So I've already overrun by about a quarter of an hour. I'm just going to have a quick look at some of the questions that have come in. Someone's saying he's using a Mac and he's having problems with it being a little bit slow, but I think what you need to do is have a chat with our tech support team. They're very used to sorting out technical problems. Could I do estimates for small jobs, bathrooms, kitchens and refurbs, etc.? Yes, no problem at all. Software is used by literally thousands of builders for doing that. So no other questions have come through. Has anybody else got an odd question before I sign off? Is there any particular thing that you're looking for me to solve today? Will I be doing any other presentations? Yeah, well, there are always loads of presentations, Daniel. If you'd like to give us a call in the morning, we can show you other features if you're looking. Does the software allow you to include heads with labour and bill costs? I'm sorry, I'm not understanding that question. Could you give me a bit more information, Rob? Overheads. Yes, sorry, the overheads are built into the markup that we loosely call profit, so you'd include that within that. Is it easy to sketch over a plan already created? Yes, no problem at all. That's very straightforward to do. For those of you, if you're interested, Gemma, I'm happy to spend a couple of minutes doing that shortly. In your build program, will this program help us with builders, building merchants, etc.? Yes, if I go back into Estimator Express, so I'm just closing the actual project itself. I'll go back into my house. So going back into the main estimate, go back to the estimate, open up plot 1, which we've just done. So if we go into our reports, there are ways of quotation inquiry. That's one of the reports that you can produce. So just to sort of repeat the cycle of information, as it were, when you set the software up, you can say to us, look, I generally trade with Jewson's or TradePoint or whatever your merchant is. There's about 8 of them that we deal with. And you say to us, I'd like to have my pricing brought down into the software automatically. So you provide us with your account. We submit that to Jewson's, say, for argument's sake. They will then send your data to us, and we then automatically forward that through you via the software automatically. So the idea is that the prices that you're using day to day are the ones that exist on your favored merchant systems. Once you've done your estimate, of course, it may well be that you want to then go out for comparative pricing. So in this situation, you can go into the quotation inquiry report, and you can see here that we've got all the items are listed. So if we look at the bricks, for argument's sake, at the moment we've got a 60p brick in there. So you can go to your merchant and say, can you give me a price for a particular type of brick? I want about 16,000 of them. Can you give me a price for kiln-dried timber and so on? Incidentally, all the prices that I've got in my system here, they're all list prices, so some of them are a little bit bonkers because obviously there's significant discounts on many products. So yeah, that's how the software will help you. A, it'll enable you to use your live pricing, and B, you can get quotes for it. Incidentally, you can also put in your own bespoke products. So if you're buying plastic windows, for argument's sake, from a local supplier, you can input those into the price book, and the software will automatically use those. A couple of people have asked me to show you how to do a trace over, so I can do that in a second. Does that answer your question about merchants, Frank? How do you round up quantities to whole numbers? Well, the software doesn't do that automatically. It can actually be quite a tricky process, not so much from a computerization perspective, but at what level do you automatically round up? For argument's sake, if you think of something like paint, you might be using paint on skirting boards, on fascias, on doors, on windows. It may be different colors. So how what is the logic for rounding it up? Because the chances are, if it worked out that you needed 1 1/4 tins of paint, would you really want it to round it up to the next 5-litre tin? Because that would make that particular element rather expensive. So we made the decision, rightly or wrongly, that not to automatically round materials up. The other thing to bear in mind is that the software automatically allows for what we broadly call wastage. Now, wastage in some sense is a bit of a catch-all because it takes account of a bit of rounding, because sometimes you can't buy 15,800 bricks, but the wastage factor is making allowance for that. We know that stuff gets nicked. Why would you allow a wastage factor on, say, a window? You can't really waste a bit of a window, but again, we know on average stuff gets nicked, it gets damaged, and the wastage factor attempts to deal with those sorts of things. Will it run on a Mac? Yes, it will do. Again, you need to speak to our technical support team. That we're well used to solving problems on that. When doing an extension, if you do the plan of the house, do you save this as a template before you then do the extension and quote? Yes, you trace over it, and once you've got that, you've effectively built a new 3D model, which is then used in the as an import for the estimate. So I think that's all the questions so far. Please feel free to keep on asking them. I'll just take a sip of water, and I'll now show you how you do the trace over process. So I'll just close this down. Okay, so I'm going to go into Plans Express. I finished with that drawing for the time being, so I'm going to close that, and I'm then going to see if I can find a trace over from a recent estimate. So just bear with me a second. I'll see if I can find something suitable. We were at the Build It show at Manchester, so I was doing a similar process there. So I'll bring this in and see whether it's a suitable trace over. Yeah, so this is an example that I sometimes use. In fact, I was doing a similar demonstration last week. So what we've actually got here is a PDF of a house design, and I've actually imported that in, and I've checked it, the size is okay, and I've dropped a few construction lines on there just to help me with my trace over. I'll show you how you do that. So I go into my basic drawing tools. Incidentally, the software has got a basic set of tools for doing drawings from scratch. So I've selected my construction lines there, and I can actually just simply click onto the walls, wherever I think I might be interested in using them. So I'll just stick those there. So you can see I've got those extra construction lines. So you spend a couple of minutes doing that, and you're ready to start the trace over. So again, if I go into my architectural menu, I can go, and again I'll use a brick and block cavity wall, and this is a lean-to extension at the back, so I know that I'm going to have to keep my my roof lines tight. So I'm going to pick the 2325 high wall. I confirm the height of the wall, the thickness of the leaves. So it's the same process. My foundation details, what my footing looks like, and in this occasion I know that I've got a 150mm cavity. Again, I'm confirming that the walls are plastered and skirted and so on. So it's exactly the same process. The software doesn't really care whether it's a brand new build or it's an existing. It's just a question of tracing round over the drawing. So this is what I was saying about using your older drawings or other people's designs to give you a kickoff point for your designs. You don't have to start with a blank piece of paper. I'm quite sure when architects do a design, they don't always think, well, I'm just going to go and sit in the corner and think about the design. I'm not going to reuse anything that I've done. You can bet your boots that anybody with any sense is going to spend a bit of time using their existing legacy drawings. So that's done the trace over of the internal and external walls. So you can see I've already got a model there. So we'll just pop the roof on now. So it's a cut roof. I'm picking the 30-degree roof. I know on this particular occasion I need to make the pitch a bit meaner to tuck it in under the windows. I can confirm the soffits, I can confirm the rafter and joist centres, I can confirm the tiling details, I can confirm whether I'm plastering and decorating. Press finish, choose the type of roof that I want. I want a lean-to roof. Choose the wall I want it to sit on. Pick the outer corner, the inner corner, and the length of my roof. Again, you can see it's placed it there. Again, it's done this daisy chaining process, asking me to place the ceilings and binders. And again, it's exactly the same process as you saw me doing with the concrete slab. Just click around the corners. I then want to do the valley section of this roof. So I pick the valley section, click OK. Again, choose the wall, pick the corners, and again use the click T on my keyboard and select the other roof for it to frame into. I seem to set it there. I think I picked the wrong roof. Just press Ctrl Z to take it off. Yes, I tried to put a lean-to roof on the back there rather than the right roof. So apologies for that. Click on the corner. Click on the other corner, press T, select it, and you can see the valleys being properly formed there. At the moment you can see I've got a bit of a hole there. If I refresh the drawing, you'll then see that it's repaired it. And then finally, just as a quick exercise, I'll drop a couple of doors in there just to show you the process. Pick some bifolds, accept the defaults. I'll just put another one there rather than there, just as an exercise. So you can see that very quickly you can develop your model of the house, and I could just as well draw the rest of the house by tracing round over it, copying it to create the roof, and it will give me a full 3D model and automated elevations. So that the whole process of trace over it's a great way of doing it, and it can be used for small projects. It can be used for housing or housing estates. So does that answer your question, guys? Was that the sort of thing that you were looking to solve? Gemma, it was Gemma that was asking me the question, and I think Frank was asking it as well. So yeah, good. Does it throw up any other questions for you, Gemma? Okay, well, you've all been very patient listening to me talking for an hour and a half. I hope it's been interesting. Please feel free to give our sales guys a call in the morning. I imagine they'll be following your visits up this afternoon with emails and conversations to see whether we can be of further assistance, and hopefully you found it useful. So unless there are any other questions, I will sign off. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.